Hey everyone, this is Mike, and in today's video I wanted to talk a little bit about raiding in Destiny 2. Now, for the gameplay that you're going to be seeing, it's going to be me and my friends doing the Leviathan. We ended up running through it last night with some friends that started playing the game because right now a very big portion of the game is free to play, including the Leviathan raids. So we ended up running through the first two raids. Third one we might do sometime later this week, who knows. But I ended up streaming it, and that's why I'm probably gonna have no audio for the video. Because you just hear me and my friends talking through each other because I didn't record it, so I had to download the stream VOD in order to get the footage. So yeah, that's kind of why I wanted to talk about it, because with a lot of new players joining, because the game, or at least a very big portion of the game, is now free to play with Shadowkeep. So that's why I thought maybe I'd go a little bit deeper into what Destiny raids are all about, so that you might have an idea and maybe want to go at it yourself as well. Now, of course, since Destiny 2 is not your classic MMORPG, encounters are going to be very different. So, of course, Destiny is a first-person shooter, and that means that you're going to be shooting a lot of stuff. So, most of the encounters have some kind of an ad phase incorporated with it, instead of you just fighting a boss. Most of the encounters in Destiny are revolved around you clearing ads while doing mechanics, or just doing mechanics themselves, and then after you've done those types of mechanics, you go into a DPS phase. This isn't always the case. Sometimes an encounter can be completely around ads or an ad clear. It can be completely around doing mechanics. For example, the Gauntlet encounter in the Leviathan is literally you clear ads, you do mechanics, and you repeat, and that's it. And then once you get to the final mechanic, you just do this one last mechanic, and you're done with the encounter. There's no real boss fight, there's no DPS phase, it's just mechanics. A very big difference in between, I'm going to compare this to Final Fantasy XIV because that's the main MMO that I play, but the very big difference in between these more classical RPGs and then Destiny 2 is the fact that it requires a lot more teamwork in order to complete these mechanics, or I should say communication, because in those other MMOs it still requires somewhat teamwork, but they are so designed that they can be done in Party Finder. Like, for example, last few weeks when I didn't have a static, I've been doing Savage in Party Finder, and all you have to do is people post a macro, you pick your position, and you're done. There are very little randomized mechanics that make it so that you need to think on the fly or communicate on the fly with your team members. So you just basically have your predetermined positions. There are very few random mechanics, like for example with Titan, the red, yellow, and the blue markers in the phase 2 or something like that. That is slightly random. But other than that, the whole fight is scripted. Now, in Destiny 2, the whole fight is scripted as well, or the whole encounter, I guess you could say. But it is much more randomized. So, for example, let's go back to this Gauntlet encounter, because it is one of my favorites from the Leviathan raid. Basically, you split into two teams. You have two runners that are gonna run into the Gauntlet, and then you have 4 people that have to kind of have them go through the Gauntlet. And the way it works is you have people stand on plates. Those plates activate a gate inside the Gauntlet, then your runner has to call out a safe spot that they have to jump through, and then the 2 people on the outside need to shoot the opposite symbols, or the opposite arrows, so that the gate will open. And then when the gate opens, the runner can run through. When the runner runs through, something will spawn on the outside that the people on the outside need to punch, and then you just rinse and repeat for all 4 of the different gates. And that's something that all needs to be communicated. In Final Fantasy, you don't have that. You just basically have your set out mechanics, you have your way to deal with them, but they require next to no communication. If I take a look at the second encounter, or well, another encounter, I guess you could say, the Pleasure Guardians, it sounds a lot worse than it is really. You're also split into teams. You have 2 people on the top of what is kind of like a forest, and they are running around with laser beams, I guess you could say. And then the other 4 people are heading through the forest, exploring it. Now, the roles of the people that are on the top, they have to guide the other 4 players through the forest so that they don't get spotted by warhounds, so that they can get to the plants that will give you a damage buff. And then it's basically your task to try and get as many damage buffs as possible before the people in the forest get either spotted by the warhounds or until your time runs out. And then you go into some kind of a DPS phase. So for that one, you also need a lot of communication between your different players to guide them through the forest safely so that they don't get spotted by these dogs. So that is one of the things that I enjoy a lot about raiding in Destiny 2. It's the pure sense of teamwork and communication because it is something that you don't really get from playing Final Fantasy. Like, Final Fantasy raids are amazing, I really love playing them, especially the Ultimate raids. They're like really well designed, and they need you to do some kind of specific cool combination of mechanics, but it doesn't require you to have a lot of team communication. In the most part, it's just like you have your pre-assigned positions and you do the mechanic in always the same way. Whereas in Destiny 2, there is a lot more communication involved, which is something that I truly enjoy about the game, and it makes it feel kind of unique. Now, of course, I don't know stuff about World of Warcraft or some other MMOs out there on how their rating system works, but this is kind of like why I enjoy Destiny rating maybe a little bit more than I do Final Fantasy rating, because it's not so much your personal performance, I guess you could say, but just like you performing as a team to complete certain mechanics. Now, of course, there's always going to be some people that don't always need to know the mechanics. When, for example, I came back during Forsaken, I got completely carried to the Last Wish raid. If people ask me how to do the mechanics there, I have no idea for most of the things. So that's a little bit unfortunate, but on the other hand, when I do learn how to do those mechanics, I could maybe help my friends through it again as well. So that's the only downside to it. Like, there's a lot of teamwork involved, but you can always have one, maybe two people on the team that don't need to know what they're doing and can get kind of carried through the mechanics as well. So that's the only downside to it. But on the other hand, there are a lot of upsides, which makes it so that raiding in Destiny is really enjoyable. There's one last thing that I forgot to mention about the raids, and that is that the raids are not exactly like just your encounter and that's it. The raid is an actual raid layer, so there's actually a lot of exploration that you can do as well inside these raids. When we talk about the Leviathan, there's not a crazy amount of exploration that you could do on the top side where you're raiding, but on the other side, each raiding encounter gives you a key, and there are a lot of chests hidden in what is called the underbelly, which is a very big exploration zone in the Leviathan itself. Sometimes these will also be kind of encounters when you're going from, let's say, the first fight to the second fight. You have to progress through some kind of a platforming section that has you explore a little bit more of this raiding layer, and it's something that makes it so that it doesn't just feel like you're fighting a boss, but you're actually fighting something in the world itself. When we look at Eater of Worlds, for example, there is a section where you can see the planet Nessus. Like, when you're on the planet Nessus, you can look up to the sky and you can see the Leviathan fly in orbit. And then when you go to the Eater of Worlds raid, at some point, you can actually look outside of the Leviathan and see the Nessus planet as well. So that is something that makes it so that it's that much more, like, I guess, immersed in the world of Destiny. Now, of course, you do need a predetermined party of 6 people. So you need to team up with some people before you head into the raid, because otherwise you head into the raid solo, and that's not necessarily something that I would advise new players to do. Now, in order to find new people, there is a looking for group channel, there is a Destiny 2 looking for group Discord as well. So there's a bunch of resources out there to find people to do the raids with, and people that will also most likely be pretty experienced about it at this point, because the game has been out for quite a while now. And I'm pretty sure that you'll be able to find some players that will be willing to take you through some of these old raids, because going back into the raid was really fun for me. Leviathan was the first raid I did in any Destiny game, because Destiny 2 was my first Destiny game. So it was really nostalgic going back in there and doing the old raids, because it was something that I hadn't done in like almost 2 years. So it was really fun for me. It was also really fun, I think, for the other people that ended up joining us, especially the newer players. And in the end, that's what raiding is all about, having fun. The loot is a good thing, but if you're having fun whilst you get it, that's even more important. So with all of that being said, I want to thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.